Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 36th audio file in the audiocast series known as the Q News Patriot. I am the Q News Patriot. My name is SGAnon. It is good to be with you, though I must admit I was delayed more than I anticipated to be over these last 48 hours. I implore each of you to, be patient and graceful with that pertaining to my wife and the next situation that she encountered just a few weeks ago. And it's sort of the theme, really, the overarching theme, if you want to think of it that way, as to what this file is really about: the ability to pivot, the ability to balance, the ability to roll with the punches, the ability to control consciously our emotional response, our mental acuity, our focus under fire, if you will. That's really what we are learning as humanity in a myriad of extremely personal ways to all of us out there, to each of you. At the same time that we have this world doing what it is doing, we have so much that we can look at and be thankful for, that we can look at and know that we are in good hands, and that we can look at and use to prepare ourselves to exercise our God-given, our spiritually enabled qualities of imagination and foresight and peacefulness and calm and attempting to hear wisdom. We can exercise all of this so that we are the best prepared to go through a period of time in human history which will see the fall of essentially the oldest empire that the world has ever known. With that, let's go ahead and move into some of the events going on, some of the things that I have been researching, had corroborated to me by my mentor, and a couple of interesting decodes from the commander-in-chief himself, sort of giving us some hope, giving us some courage, and especially helping the United States of America and we the people Patriots to sort of understand what is coming to American shores very soon. As a matter of fact, what is already here. So on that, we're going to save that part for last. Let's go ahead and discuss Russia and Saudi Arabia. Just, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, Russia launched a very enormous offensive against the Ukrainian military. They destroyed a number of infrastructure facilities, a number of critical areas of society, simply because the Ukrainian war machine feeds off of those same areas. And so in preparation for what I believe to be a multinational occupation of Ukraine that is coming, and it will involve NATO countries as well as sort of this alliance of the East, if you want to call it that. We're going to have China involved in Europe. We'll have China involved in the Middle East. It's my belief that Russia, Belarus, Hungary, and possibly Turkey as well will be involved in Ukraine directly. So we're seeing that preparation happening now. We are seeing the Russians do what the Russians are very adept and very skilled at doing, which is identifying the times and especially the time frames throughout the seasons which their war machine is most effective and historically unchallenged. And we are actually entering into those months now. There's a reason that the Russians launched the special military operation of Ukraine, or in Ukraine, in February. We're going to see the 1-year marker of that come to show some very interesting things. It is worth noting that the Russians and Putin are very well aware that this is not going to be sort of over in an extremely short period of time, even from now. These tunneling systems that are being destroyed throughout Europe, a number of the deepest ones have been dealt with, especially throughout Central Europe, but we have a number of hellholes, if you will, that have yet to be dealt with fully. And they sort of crisscross between across national divides beneath the Eastern European area and up into the Baltic and Scandinavian nation states. It is worth noting that all of these have to be purged, all of these have to be destroyed. I encourage each of you to look very seriously into the ancestry as it pertains to Sweden. Just how many commonalities do Sweden and Switzerland have? It is worth your review in that regard, because we're going to see Sweden the focus of a number of discussions in the narrative by year's end. And we may very well see Sweden actively involved in sort of an existential fight for its own life. You know, as we go through this process, the power structures that govern all areas of our society are either being reclaimed and converted or are being destroyed. We are seeing the geopolitical stage, the geopolitical situation has essentially blown itself apart for the public narrative to see, for the public to see and understand. The situation as it pertains to banking is sort of out there for all of the public to understand and witness and see. The situation as it pertains to the child trafficking, not blown apart yet, not blown open yet necessarily in the public space, but enough information and factual photographic, videographic evidence has been circulated in all other spaces that the general public has sort of a soft awareness of these things. What their final opinion in the moment might be may still be up for debate, but the soft awareness that there is a reality here of some sort and that further clarity is needed is exactly the launching point that we all need to have in this awakening experience. We are watching all of this coalesce and come together now, at the same time that physical world-changing operations, economic alliances, military operations and military alliances, governmental actors sort of playing their roles and playing their parts, if you will, at all levels in many governments around the world. It's all coalescing and converging to bring us to what I believe to be the end of the old system, the cleanup period of what comes from that, and then the introduction, maybe simultaneously with the cleanup period, the introduction of a new way of life into the world. Won't it be a wonderful thing when your money has real value? Won't it be a wonderful thing when your energy is either dirt cheap or free? Won't it be a wonderful thing when you know that you could go to a doctor's office, for example, and they would consult with you and treat you and diagnose you with the greatest possible expectation for your healing being the primary focus, rather than the compliance with regulation and the fearfulness, excuse me, that many medical professionals are subjected to as it pertains to suspension or removal of their licensure if they don't toe a particular line governed by a select few. Won't it be wonderful when the responsibility for your health is squarely back in your hands and your shoulders, and the deck is not stacked against you? It is worth noting that all of that is coming, but we have to go through a process where we remove the poison, if you will. We destroy the last of this problem that has plagued humanity and has shortened our lifespans and destroyed our world and our bodies and our spiritual capabilities purposefully for many, 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 many generations. So that's a good segue into the next discussion that I'd really like to have as it pertains to Russia and other militaries and things like that all around the world. The U.S. continuity of government situation that is going on is happening to the knowledge of all of the other world parties that need that knowledge. And it is not happening publicly for the masses, especially here in the United States, so that they may have the opportunity to organically come into the awareness of what is going on in the world on their own, at the same time that we use this deep state structure against itself and force them to destroy their own system and out themselves sort of while they're in the hot seat. It is worth noting, however, that that continuity of government operation is a vast, multi-scale just remarkably comprehensive operation, and it does require support. The recent treasure trove of Biden classified documents, that's an interesting time for all of this to come about. Not 2 days prior to the release of the first set of documents in Delaware, the Saudi Arabian military was leaving Delaware in the middle of the night. Why would they be there? Q references Saudi Arabia quite a bit. Q references Saudi Arabia as it pertains to the Clinton Foundation. Saudi Arabia is often highlighted as a hub for adrenochrome, a hub for very black magic that sort of emanated throughout the rest of the world. Shortly after President Trump's visit to Saudi Arabia in 2017, the sitting crown prince at the time was arrested. A new crown prince, Crown Prince bin Salman, took his place. Saudi Arabia is where a lot of this evil ties together, and they have the goods on just about everybody and everything. So the Saudi Arabian military leaves Delaware at approximately 2 a.m. Eastern time. I forget the exact date, but it would have been a day or two prior to the release of the set of documents pertaining directly to Biden's Delaware residence. The timing seems too perfect to me. I'm not going to assert this as something that I can absolutely unequivocally confirm, because I cannot. But what I can say is that an operation like the introduction of evidence into the public space would have to come from an open source situation. It would have to be legally found, and special military operations in a situation where the levers of government at all levels have sort of been suspended and placed into safe mode, if you will. If any of you remember the old PC desktops where you could place them directly into safe mode and then alter different areas of coding and things that were going on with inside the computer itself. That's sort of what we have going on as it pertains to law in the world today. And so how do we introduce evidence? Well, we have to have the evidence to introduce first. And so it's very interesting that this correlation happened in the time frame that it happened, with the Saudi Arabian government over these last couple of weeks discussing a heightened level of coordination with Russia, especially at the military and economic levels. We know that Russian military intelligence is one of the premier agencies in all of the world. Perhaps one of the only ones to truly rival in any true sense of capacity the military intelligence capabilities of the United States military. Most of which, just speculation, I would say most of us have no idea even about the levels of technology, the levels of capability that exist in those sectors. But for that timing to be occurring on the public space, and then we have the introduction of classified documents, is it possible that what is contained within these classified documents, and this is the question I pose to each of you, because this is a question I've not been able to truly ascertain, but is it possible that those documents contain information directly related to child trafficking and directly tying child trafficking and the issue of government trafficking in Washington, D.C. to Joseph R. Biden and Barack Hussein Obama? We know that Barack Obama, famous for Pizzagate, Pizzagate has to come into the narrative again at some point, and it will. I have actually had that particular piece of information confirmed to me by my mentor several times. Pizzagate has not gone away. But sort of prepping the narrative for that, we have to bring it into a coalescent situation that ties it in relevance to the here and now. Could this be an avenue by which this occurs? Just recently, we had Bibi Netanyahu from Israel threatening to release information, or excuse me, an article that surfaced from 2016, where he threatened to release information regarding an elite Washington, D.C. pedophile ring. We know that that narrative has been prepped on purpose. We know that that narrative, all part of this narrative warfare, this very large if you want to call it 5D or fifth generation, I simply call it irregular warfare that's going on. The counterinsurgency for your mind. Those sorts of informational drops and resurfaces are not accidental, if you will. And so this could very well tie much of this together in an incredible bow that would be extremely difficult for the American population to stomach, and would be extremely difficult for the individuals, especially in the American center left and the American far left, who are still very caught in the brainwashing matrix, however they receive their media and things of this nature. It would be very, very difficult for them to sort of reconcile the two. And so we would have, I think we could have a Twitter files situation going on were this to come out. Now, some of this is speculatory, but it is worth noting that the pedophilia in Washington, D.C., in particular, will have to come out for the United States public, because it will be a very catalyzing, very uniting factor as it pertains to this idea of government corruption and just what government corruption really means. If you say to your average American citizen, government corruption, what does that make you think of? 8 out of 10 answers will be something pertaining to money. Someone got paid, someone funneled money somewhere, there was a dirty deal done, or perhaps there were classist issues being sought out or seen, sexist issues, those types of things. But only 2 in 10 will tell you that government corruption means pedophilia, that government corruption means human trafficking, that government corruption means the ritualistic murder of young children, that government corruption means the assault of people, the assault of victims who were stolen from in the night from their families and everything they knew and loved, and sold into slavery to the highest bidder. It is worth noting that that particular reality will have to be introduced in the public space before we can reasonably say we are moving forward. We cannot say that we're progressing in this operation, that we're progressing in this awakening, until we get a number of individuals on board with that. And while I understand the vigor that comes from all of the camps out there pertaining to the emergency alert system, the emergency broadcast system, stating that we could get everybody on board really quickly with these issues if we just sort of pulled the plug, that particular avenue of thought is not accounting for the fact that there are many other angles to this operation that have to be given the time necessary to succeed. The changeover of our food supply, the purging of our shipping lanes and supply chains, the purging of water treatment networks throughout all of the known world, the purging of chemical plants that exist solely to destroy our earth and our skies. This process has to sort of continue in the background. I believe much of that is actually a very real kinetic special forces situation. But if we were to sort of blow the lid off of everything while many of these operations in the background were continuing, we would not fully be there, but we would have encouraged ourselves into a position that we would now have to defend. And I believe it could cause much more chaos in my own assessment than simply progressing in the way that we have been progressing. We have a demonstrable situation where the militaries of the world are actively pursuing deep state assets, criminals. Recently, it came out, and I reported several weeks ago and took quite a bit of heat for it, but it recently came out that, in fact, the Brazilian military has been on the side of the protesters in most situations in Brazil, and they have, by and large, prevented the enforcement of federal actions by the federal police force in Brazil against Brazilian citizens or members of the Brazilian armed forces. There is a very real situation happening in Brazil where the military is increasingly less and less interested in being peaceful about this situation with Lula. But I do believe that, you know, as with any situation where we're dealing with espionage and traitors, we are having to allow their military and give them the time to identify within their ranks who are problematic and who are not. That's one of the things that we've done multiple times throughout this process. I call it a crazy Ivan, where we stop and we assess our backing, if you will. We assess what's in our war chest, and who's in the field with us, and we ensure that our fighting force is still unified and still on mission and all focused, and things of this nature. And so that's part of what we have as we go along in this process. We have to have that. If we were to move forward with more sensitive portions of operations, especially as it pertains to maybe reclaiming governments physically, possible military coups that may happen at points along this journey, would you really want to risk doing something like that with the possibility that you have an espionage asset or a saboteur with serious access to areas that could cause the operation harm or even jeopardize it entirely? Um, I don't believe that any of us would want to take that chance, and I don't think that that's why we're here. I think that we're here to do the most patient, most deliberate, most thorough job possible, um, as it pertains to the militaries of the world, to purge corruption, both from their own ranks, but also in their governments as well. At the same time, the digital army, you and me and everyone else out there, our job is primarily to continue to awaken the masses and spread the word about what the real truth is. Our job is in many respects more important because we directly influence certain casualty areas, especially from kill shots and things of that nature, by continuing to scream loudly, as Ryan Cunningham put it. My deepest prayers and condolences and sympathies for him and the millions out there like him who were simply duped. They were simply brainwashed into a modality of behavior that did not suit them, and was not conducive to their overall health. And it's a hard and a very sad lesson to learn. And I pass no judgment on anyone who is learning that lesson, and I absolutely pass no judgment or take no joy, if you will, in their health struggles. I really do hope that we actually are able to reverse a lot of this damage, and I do believe that we will be able to as we go forward. But these initial phases are very tough and very difficult. But as we spread truth, as we continue to yell from the watchtower, if you will, we are allowing the kinetic sides of this operation, the actual dethroning of deep state assets in all areas of government, the pursuit and capture of deep state assets and combatants all throughout the world, the identification of hellholes of evil and the destruction of those areas. We are allowing the breadth, if you will, or the breadth of time, if you will, for that to occur, um, with the least amount of mass worldwide casualty events possible. And sort of on all of that note, I'm going to come into what I believe to be sort of maybe the crux of the meat, if you will, of file 36 this evening, is this idea of hellholes of evil. Based on the research that I'm finding, new pictures, I thought about sharing them, but I decided the graphic nature of them simply precluded that. They're very, very, very graphic. Um, Different maps that have come up, showing up in common places in certain forums. It appears, just in my estimation, and I believe this to be true, that we are going to see a reemergence into the public narrative space, perhaps over the next 8 to 12 weeks. Perhaps it's faster than that. I'm not certain. But certainly before we get into spring, we will see a reemergence of an Epstein Island style situation, a satanic Luciferian island, um, a very, very, I believe it's going to be graphic in some respects. I believe that it will receive virtually no coverage from the mainstream news, but I believe there is a significant amount of alt media that will pick it up and sort of run with it. But I expect that emergence to come. Um, as we go through this process, these islands, um, these elitist hellholes, are all sort of being reclaimed, purged, cleansed, whatever term you want to use, taken back, captured. And then the evidence is sort of drip, drip very slowly in key areas out to the public. I think that we're going to have more than just a drip drip about a specific island, a specific place that is well known. I do not know. I cannot really say anything more about it other than just those very general ideas. But it seems very likely with the timing, with the exposure of everything that we're seeing right now, with the vaccine agenda finally coming to light, with the pedophile rings that we discussed earlier being brought back into the narrative space. It seems like we're being prepped. Um, a number of individuals still in government are connected to more than just Epstein Island. A number of individuals um, still publicly out there, if you will, being shown to the masses, although many of them have been dealt with, but publicly they're being shown to the masses. A number of them have ties all over the world to these sorts of ceremonies, these sorts of situations, sacrifices, blood occult magic, cannibalism, things like that. Joe Biden was one of those individuals. Hunter Biden is one of those individuals. Um, Barack Obama, Hussein Obama, one of those individuals. So it's worth noting that this particular area will have to come back into the public space. And how very interesting that just recently Biden has been in the Virgin Islands, directly tied chronologically, sort of um, concurrently, if you will, tied time frame wise to these actions between the Virgin Islands, JP Morgan, as it pertained to Jeffrey Epstein and the financing of child trafficking and the child trafficking networks, the sexual predatory behavior in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So this has occurred. Now we have classified documents that are being dropped left and right with Mr. Biden, and I believe many of those will tie directly back to Hussein Obama. It seems very interesting that we should have some research that I'm finding and that my mentor has found quite a number of images of what appear to be new child trafficking dens, pictures that have not sort of been on the main internet for a while. So understanding that, I believe that 2023, year of the rabbit hole, follow the white rabbit. Is this the year? I believe it is, but I do believe it is the year that we see a true awareness from humanity, a true understanding, a unifying perspective, if you will, as it pertains to the issue of ritualistic child sacrifice and murder. I believe the answer to that postulation that I was just posing is yes. I believe that we see it this year. I believe that we begin to see military justice this year, and that will continue into next year. And it is worth noting, I had someone discussing this with me over these last couple of weeks. It is worth noting that at some level, Donald Trump has placed the military in provisional charge of the United States of America. At some level, what we are living in the United States of America is being allowed to happen. But there are other other areas at other levels of society that continue to affect society day to day, and they were not placed sort of directly under military control. State level agencies, if you will, for example, are sort of acting of their own volition at this time, which is by design. This is how we want things to be so that we can identify organically all traitors at all levels of society everywhere so that we can design and implement operations to go and take those traitors, to take back those particular areas, to place them more under a direct control for a limited period of time. And as we go through 2023, I believe that we're going to see increasingly more preparation towards those ends, more movement publicly in the narrative space and the public consciousness towards those ends. And because all of that is occurring, we will see the desperation moves, the death knells, the death thrashes, if you will, of a deep state Kabbalist power mafia that has sort of dictated life in this world for far, far too long. We will survive this. We will be able to weather and live through the chaos that they are about to cause. We will be able to tell the story of retribution and reckoning and justice to our children, and them to tell to their children, and so on and so forth for generations. But every last one of these cockroaches will die here. Their story will end, and they will have no progeny. They will have no posterity. They will never again grace the annals of history in this earth and in this world. They will be made an irrelevance in time. That is what they are faced with, and there is nothing that can stop that from happening to them. It's been wonderful to be with all of you tonight. I appreciate very much your patience. I appreciate your deference. I appreciate the myriad and many varied points of view that each of you espouse, both in your emails to me, your TruthSocial interactions, and more. And I guess really what I'd like to say to you tonight is thank you. Not for anything that you've done for me, not for listening to this video, but thank you for being here. Thank you for being aware and awake in this time and place. Thank you for listening to the call, whatever burned within your soul, that brought you into a much higher state of awareness. By doing so, you have begun a shift in the future of this world, and the future of your life, and the direction of all of your posterity that will come after you, that cannot be stopped. We were all, and we are all, in this together. And we are creating a world that we will be proud to look at one another and discuss how we contributed in the smallest and the biggest ways. There is no level of contribution that is right, but there must be a level of contribution. We will be proud to be active in our civic process again. We will hold our head high as we direct and control what happens in our communities, as we kick the corporate chains out of our local economic scenes and introduce small business, locally made, homegrown. We, the people, are changing the world. We have an incredible part in this awakening journey. Some of the greatest military minds and men and women are doing the heavy lifting for us. But our job is to continue lifting, to continue showing, to continue growing, to love one another, and to thrive. And so even as we go through what could very well be a valley of the shadow type year, we will do so knowing that abundance and prosperity and peace, the likes of which mankind has not known for many, many millennia, but that which is available to each of us every day in our quiet place, we will be able to feel it as a matter of fact, as business as usual. It will be part of our lifestyle here again in this world. And no amount of suffering can ever discourage me from that. And I would hope the same be true for each of you. This evening, kiss your spouse, hug your kids, call your friend, send that email, send that text message, make that baked good. Enjoy life. Be smart. Be prepared. Understand that you are along for a journey that was ordained. Understand that your place in that is to love and to spread that love and to spread your awareness and your truth. But be smart and be prepared. But don't allow any of that to take even a moment's joy from you, because that is what this cabal has spent our entire lives doing to us. And I, for one, will be put into the ground before I will allow them even a minuscule, even an infinitesimal amount of satisfaction from knowing that they bested me emotionally. They will never best me, and they will never best all of you. Each of you are some of the finest people alive. Don't get a big head, but understand that you are here for a reason and you have a great purpose, and we are truly in this together. Where we go one, Patriots, we go all. Go in peace. I'll be back with you again soon. This is SGAnon. Thanks. Bye-bye.